Next on Public Lives, Doris Haddock, known to many as Granny D, discusses the journal she kept during her walk from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. in an attempt to raise awareness for campaign finance reform. It's about an hour.
As soon as the publication of Granny D's book was announced, and that spark really started the process for this evening. And I want to add that Granny D represents political commitment and independent spirit, and they're the same qualities. This is a real heartfelt commercial message by me. The same qualities reflected in the example of our local bookstore. The Odyssey is committed to independent thought, the exchange of ideas, and community building. And I want to thank all of you, Odyssey staff that are here, for bringing this, making this happen. There they are. I don't know where Joan is. I was supposed to say, I'm Andrea Vazian. I forgot that part. And I'm the Dean of Religious Life here at Mount Holyoke College. The Odyssey bookstore really was the spark, but let me share with you the very remarkable list of other sponsors that made this evening possible. The Franklin, Hampshire chapter of CP PACS, the Office of Religious Life and the Five College Women's Studies Research Center here at Mount Holyoke, the Coalition for Fair Elections, Massachusetts Voters for Clean Elections, the Alliance for Democracy, the American Friends Service Committee, Trap Rock Peace Center, there's more, Amherst and Northampton League of Women Voters, Mount Toby Friends Meeting, and the Western Mass Green Party all came together to make this happen. After Granny D's talk, there will be a question and answer period, and then, as you see, Granny D's great book is on sale, and she will be available to sign your book. And I just wanted to remind you that Granny D's book would make a wonderful, Mother's Day or graduation gift. So those are available for your purchasing pleasure. Granny D will be introduced tonight by M.A. Swedlin from Deerfield. And before we bring M.A. Swedlin up, let me tell you something about this quite extraordinary organizer, speaker, teacher, activist. To say that M.A. Swedlin has been central to the work around what we now call clean elections, meaning elections based on the principle that our public servants should in fact be publicly financed. To say that she's been central would be an understatement. Starting in the late 1980s, when the Pioneer Valley pro-democracy campaign, based here in the Valley, became the first group in the state, in fact, one of the first in the country, to start educating and organizing folks around this principle of clean elections. Since then, MA has been a leader and a spark plug and a tireless worker and an inspiration to all of us. Whether MA is leading her guerrilla theater troupe of Fat Cat Players, or taking part in another group that she's a part of, the Billionaires for Bush, or if she is supervising petition drives, or if MA is organizing rallies to pressure recalcitrant legislatures, or if she's serving on the steering committee of the Massachusetts Voters for Clean Elections, or if MA is doing, like Granny D did, if she's doing civil disobedience in the US Capitol as part of the Democracy Brigades, MA has been for years and years on the forefront of this most important struggle for democracy. And I need to say, MA, we are very proud of you and we are very grateful to you. M.A. Swedlin.
Thank you. I am honored and excited to be here tonight. I have been somehow chosen to introduce Doris Haddock, and I'm overwhelmed. She is my model and my mentor. She doesn't know that, but it's true. But before I do, I would like to, Andrea addressed some of these groups and talked a little bit about them, but I wanted to recognize the work that has been done in this valley for the fight for democracy. There are people who, Andrea mentioned me, but I have not been standing alone. And I wanted to recognize the work of several groups and people who have carried this fight forward since the late 80s. The Working Group on Electoral Democracy developed the strategy for what is now called clean elections. As most of you know, and Andrea talked about, clean elections, just in case there's somebody in this room who doesn't know, clean elections is a voluntary system for candidates who agree to strict spending limits, $100 contribution limits, and show significant support in their district. They then qualify for limited amounts of public funds for which they will be given a fair chance at winning an election. This concept was developed by the electoral group on the Working Group on Electoral Democracy, which Randy Keeler was a founding member of, and I think tonight is an important night to recognize Randy's work. Randy has gone on, besides working as one of the two members of this valley, of the Working Group on Electoral Democracy. Randy has gone on to help every group in the country that is dedicated to the clean money philosophy. He has offered guidance, faith, and wisdom to so many of us locally and around the country. He is not able to be here tonight, but he wishes that he was. So I wanted to recognize his work. Andrea mentioned the Pioneer Valley Pro-Democracy Campaign. There are several people in the room who worked with that group to sponsor the first ballot question in the United States in 1992. And then Mass Voters for Clean Elections took over where the Pioneer Valley Pro-Democracy Campaign left off and organized the effort for the statewide Clean Elections ballot question. There have been an amazing number of volunteers in this area, and since the law has passed, they have worked tirelessly to defend it from a very aggressive legislature. If you help Mass Voters for Clean Elections to pass or defend this law, will you please stand up? Come on, there's more of you, I know, come on. Everybody who's put a bumper sticker on, everybody who's made a call. Thank you. And finally, I'd like to recognize a unique group of people who have worked on this fight for democracy, the Democracy Brigaders, some of whom are up there. These folks traveled to the Capitol Rotunda in Washington, D.C. from all around the U.S. to make a passionate statement to the leaders of our country about the state of our democracy. Because they chose the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol to address their legislature, our legislature, about the political bribery rampant throughout the campaign system, they were arrested and handcuffed, charged and sentenced. There have been 6 brigades and more than 80 people arrested in the U.S. Capitol. 21 of them are from Western Massachusetts. I am proud to share membership in the Democracy Brigade with Doris Haddock and the other people. Would you please stand up if you are part of the Democracy Brigades? Thank you for your amazing work. So now, it is my great honor to introduce Doris Haddock, our neighbor to the north from Dublin, New Hampshire, who has become our nation's voice of conscience. A woman who in her 89th year asked herself, how else might I better spend my remaining days. Before I met her, I would have answered this question about my 89th year. I'll spend time with my grandkids, you know, my great-grandkids. I'll maybe, hopefully be able to go out and work in my garden, and I'll try and stay away from doctors. Now, I imagine myself cross-country skiing. Do you have the clicker? I don't know who has the clicker. Cross-country skiing in West Virginia. Oh, I've got it. I don't know where it is. Oh, that was good. Oh, okay, somebody else has to work the clicker. I won't be good at it. I picture myself skiing along a road in West Virginia, having traveled across the whole country, talking to everyone I meet about democracy. And you will see this before the night's over. Always a reformer. She says she has saved the most important for last. The fight to establish true political democracy in this country. This cheerful, straight-talking New Englander set out from California to walk the walk and talk the talk of campaign finance reform. But she does not put her audiences to sleep talking about contribution limits or the ins and outs of independent expenditures. Doris talks about the real reasons for getting big money out of our political system. The ones we all understand in our hearts. All right. Doris talks, she talks about the ones that we all understand in our hearts. Saving our democracy and civil rights. That's what this is all about. She tells our leaders that it is not a time to be cautious. It is a time for risk and personal sacrifice. And who better to tell them than Doris, who has just spent the last 3 years risking everything, crisscrossing the country on foot, on skis, and an airplane to deliver her message. She is honest, forthright. Her message is full of love and warmth, but there is also a good dose of piss and vinegar. She does not limit her lecture on courage to just our political leaders. During one of the rallies in Washington, she was speaking, that she was going to be speaking at, she was surrounded on the podium by all the executive directors of all the national organizations who have spent years working on campaign finance reform. When it was her turn to talk, she gave a fiery speech about the scandalous political bribery that goes on every day in our nation's capital. Everyone cheered and clapped. Then she pulled out a piece of paper and she read the legal definition of bribery and invited everyone to follow her over to Janet Reno's office. She planned to tack the paper up on Janet's door and demand the Justice Department go over to the Capitol and immediately start making arrests. Our legislators are violating our nation's laws on bribery. The rest of the people on the podium started looking at their watch. They started making excuses about next appointments. And Doris went there by herself. She knows we can bring about fundamental change if we set our minds to it and we speak the truth to the powers that be. Her faith is contagious. So put on your walking shoes. We have work to do. Please join me in a warm welcome for Doris Haddock, better known to all of us as Granny D.
Do you have a bunch of slides? Just that one? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. What a wonderful introduction. Thank you, Emma. Thank you very much. Thank you all for inviting me here tonight. I'm hoping that I will convert every one of you. Let me start in the heart of Texas, with this little description from the book. About 160 miles west of El Paso, the Long X Ranch spreads over mountains and valleys for as far as you can see. The white adobe ranch headquarters dates to the 1880s and is nestled in trees next to a spring. In back of the main house is a line of stone bunkhouses, all with made-up beds and bathrooms, just in case someone might stop by. Actually, up to 50 people could stop by. Mary Jo met me at the door. She was very trim in blue jeans and a blue shirt. Her dark hair pulled businesslike into her cowboy hat. The men and women who work the ranch are better looking than any cowboys or cowgirls ever dreamed up in Hollywood. Their eyes are bluer and squintier. Their wide-brimmed white hats are wider and more stained with character. Their spurs jingle in their leather chaps and holsters squeak as these men and women give you a great handshake saying, "Howdy, ma'am." They defer to Mary Jo with tips of their hats and assents to her orders, yet they all eat at the same long table for breakfast, supper, and dinner. Ranch life is a world apart from modern industrialized American culture, where things are scheduled on pocket computers, and there never seems to be a satisfying ending to anything. On the ranch, the colt gets born, the herd gets moved, the fence gets mended, it rains or doesn't. A person's connection with the earth is constant and intimate, and one's position on the food chain is quite visible and a matter for vigilance. Life is exuberantly laid bare. The cowboys and cowgirls of the valley were not much for urban discretion, and I so enjoyed for the 3 days I headquartered there a swirl of news about romances and jealousies. Stories were told in the kitchen, which was big enough for a good bunch of folks. There's a beautiful old stove, great cooking vessels, and a fine view up the hill. Stories were also told in the dining room, around the long trestle table across from the fireplace. In Texas especially, I think there is a tincture of some aphrodisiac in the branch water. Perhaps energy seeps into the subterranean rivers from those vast stores of liquid energy being pumped into the pipeline by those countless copulating metal sculptures that dot the landscape east of the Long X. Or perhaps it is ranch life generally, where one sees so much nature all day long and does not want to feel left out of the fun. One evening, I watched from the edge of a small, round corral. Inside, a teenaged clay furlong was breaking a colt with great patience and caution, and with very few but important words of advice from his father perched nearby. The young colt would be calm and easy, then he would bolt. Then he would be easy again as the young man walked him around and around and gradually introduced him to a bridle and then to a small saddle. We watched this as the sky drew dark and a million stars and a brilliant red Mars came out. Bats flicked around over the corral, barely visible against the western sky, where only a faint Wedgwood glow remained. Soon, and by bright starlight, the boy was riding the colt. The creature, its head and tail high, seemed to be fine with it. The evening air was filled with dust and the sound of hooves and low conversations. Clay and his father over here in the corral, and Mary Jo and some of the boys over there, evaluating this new addition to the workforce. By 8:30, when the last color was gone from the sky, we had all turned in. I was so comfortable to be in a place where the sun again measured my day, telling me when to get up and go to work and when to go to bed. You can get a great deal done in such a day. In the blue dawn light on the morning I left, Mary Jo and the men came around to the front of the ranch house in their horses for a quick goodbye. I was leaving to bite off another 10 miles of highway, and they were off to bring some of the herd from the parched upper range down to a valley where there was still some grass. I silently prayed they would have some rain soon. They tipped their hats like they do and turned to gallop off in the early light with Mary Jo in the lead. As you can see, the America I discovered was in many ways the America we sometimes think has faded away into our history. It is all still out there, the hard work, the courage, the adventure. I discovered in my walk that it is never too late to find that adventure and to savor it. I also discovered that Americans are struggling and connect with deep meaning in their lives. Here is a passage from the book on that subject. A woman of about 50 had parked her car behind us and was trying to catch up to us on foot. When I saw she was struggling and not going to make it, I stopped the car and walked back to her. She spread her arms out. Her eyes were streaming tears. She gave me a great hug and tried to speak, but just shook her head back and forth as she looked at me, trying to make a word come. I could only smile at her and say that it was all right, and this was a good place for me to take a rest, so there's no hurry. She finally got her voice and said breathlessly that she was just coming back from the doctor in the city and had seen me walking. It seemed clear to me that she had received some hard news. "Are you all right?" I asked her. "Well, not as well as you are, I guess," is all she would say through a sardonic smile. She gave me another hug and turned away to walk back to her car. I do not know what she was thinking about or how her life had turned to make this moment so intense for her. But after scores of little moments like this, I had come to understand that people have a great unmet need to live a life that expresses their passions and values. And they think they are being cheated out of that life, that they will die and it will have passed them by. They see an old woman doing something she believes in, and she somehow carries this ineffable something for them. Our shallow culture makes us people of great longing, for we are not always provided with opportunities to live out our most meaningful beliefs. What indeed would the community look like if it was the perfect expression of our best instincts and deepest beliefs? The difference between that ideal and our actual lives is the gap that, like a stretched elastic, energizes both our political emotions and our sense of personal belonging. Politics, in this sense, is a much more personal thing than we give it credit poor. That passage represents the kind of experience I had constantly on the road. Here is another brief example. There were often crowds now along the road, and more hands to touch and hugs to receive. Sometimes the reaction was a great mystery to me, like a young black man, perhaps in his early 20s, who had come out of his sickbed at his mother's suggestion to stand at the end of his driveway to see me pass. When I approached, he broke down and wept for no purpose that I could understand. I held him and made light of it, but he continued weeping and finally could not stand. I don't know what this is, I said to myself. It may or it may not be good. What was it? Well, I think we are all starving for more meaning in our lives. We are starving for people to believe in, for people to trust. That starving that I saw was sad, and yet it told me that people's values are safely rooted in deep soil. They long for a world that reflects their values, values which I found to be strong, secure, and based in love. I fell in love with America and with Americans all over again on this long walk. It also gave me the opportunity to see America through the eyes of those who took time to walk with me. Here is an example. On the far side of Dallas, I finally had time to just walk again and relax. Much of it was alongside a beautiful man, Ghulam Mohammed, who had come to America from India 10 years earlier. He was walking with me to celebrate the dream of America in his heart. Frankly, I think if anyone from nearly any other country in the world could see the America that Ghulam and I saw, all the kindness, openness, and the relative lack of class distinctions, they would have applied for a visa the very next day. You cannot imagine what it means for most people of the world to be able to walk down a country, shout a hi to someone walking in the field, and to get a wave and a hi in return. We take that sort of open friendliness and absence of class barriers for granted in America. What the writer Richard Rodriguez calls that Jeffersonian high is rooted so deeply in our dream of equality that we do not even see it. Howdy! Ghulam, with his dear subcontinental accent, would shout to a fellow working on an old truck. Hi! The reply would come, usually with a wave. Not only did I have the privilege of seeing things through their eyes, but also through their hearts. I cannot tell you what wonderfully interesting people are to be found in every valley and hill and plain of this country. Here is Virginia Haddock. On a Sunday afternoon, I returned to the desert floor to resume my walk the next morning. That evening, staying in the trailer home of Virginia Haddock was the icing on the cake. Now, Doris, sit down right here and I will give you a concert, she said after dinner. I sat and sipped my tea as she picked 18 instruments off the wall of her trailer, one by one, and played and sang on the road to Mandalay. For the rest of the evening, trumpet, fiddle, flute, banjo, and on, with vocals in her high-pitched voice where breath would allow. It may seem comical as I describe it, but it was in fact quite something. Here was a woman in the vast desert of New Mexico, letting her every breath make the best music she could muster. Your breath can blow through more instruments than you can imagine. And they were all there at Virginia's. So she sang, strummed, pounded, and blew her song into the night as I tapped my toes. I imagined that the lizards and the desert rabbits outside were doing the same, swinging back and forth with a smile and a loving stare at Virginia's little trailer in the desert. All of us amazed at what can be done with the breath of a life. And so I was amazed at the breath of my own life. I never knew if I could really make it. Always ahead with the Appalachian Mountains. I could barely get to the top of a desert hill. How could I expect to cross those great mountains in winter? In fact, I crossed them in blizzard conditions. I don't know how I did it, other than to tell you that if you will just put one foot in front of the other, you can do anything and go anywhere. I did not do it alone. Many, many people helped me. When I began the walk, I had recently lost my husband and my best woman friend. I had good friends in my hometown, but I felt very much alone after my Jim had died and my best friend Elizabeth. But as my walk continued, I found more and more good, deep friends that I know I would die for, and they would die for me. Here is a snapshot. Nick Palumbo, my young carpenter friend from Chicago, who had walked with me in New Mexico, arrived as I approached Memphis, Tennessee. He had worked carpentry jobs to earn his road money, and now was ready to join me for the rest of the way. He and Jason, who was from Little Rock, Arkansas, hit it off very nicely. They would take turns driving the support vehicle and walking with me, and were both full of joyful observations as we moved through this interesting landscape. They would sleep in the vehicle or where a bed was offered, and they lived on a mixture of offered home-cooked meals and junk food. Serious John Anthony was with us too, living in the same way out of the vehicle and often wrestling with a laptop computer or making cell phone calls ahead. In the Delta, we were unknown vagabonds. It was great fun to be traveling together toward Washington, a stranger destination than any city of Oz. We talked to the people along the way to explain the purpose of the walk and to ask their opinions. So you can tell all these medium-build, dark-haired 20-somethings apart if you ever meet them. Nick is the ill-shaven, sleepy-eyed, cool customer who looks a bit like James Dean on his day off. Jason is the bright-eyed collegiate type you might think just hatched a great practical joke or started a computer company. John is the serious fellow with the well-trimmed beatnik beard. He might be a record producer or an Ataxa classical musician. Sometimes when we were far from anyone who might hear us and laugh, we sang as we walked. Nick's father had belonged to a barbershop quartet, so Nick knew all the old songs. His brother, unfortunately, inherited the family voice. No matter, these were the songs I knew and danced to as a young girl, and they gave me great energy as we walked and walked and walked. The summer heat was moderating, and I thank the God for that. Earlier back in Arizona, others had walked with me, great characters who gave their all to my project. Here are Herb and Matt. In the evening, as I walked down the dusty road, Matt and Herb were atop a low hill, silhouetted against the sunset, like two Scarlett O'Haras, shaking their fists at each other and having a wonderfully loud argument about Native American culture. The villagers were watching from their patios and yards. The argument had something to do with all the litter strewn about. Centuries of repression, environmentalism, racism, and so forth. Those two had wonderful arguments from time to time, though I believe they are good friends at some deep and hard to locate level. They are both intense reformers. Matt is young. He came close to joining the priesthood, I believe, but instead got a law degree and does the Lord's work on Capitol Hill for Common Cause. Herb has been a reformer organizer all his life, in addition to his careers. They are both handsome and wonderful to be around. It is quieter to be with them individually, however. Herb is an explainer, which would drive Matt crazy. If you ask him what time it is, Matt told me, Herb will tell you, but he'll also tell you how the watch was made. Herb is also a tenacious organizer. He will argue with complete strangers about how they are the problem if they are not voting. He gets quite worked up. He's right about it, but one does have to come to the rescue of strangers from time to time. Well, the friendships grew and the word spread. When I walked the final miles to the United States Capitol building, some 2,300 people were walking with me and having a wonderful time. Tell you until you walk America, you cannot understand its beauty, and you cannot begin to understand the kindness of its people. In Cumberland, Maryland, the people of the town heard I was coming, and they heard it would be my 90th birthday. They marched through their streets with me, a traffic-stopping great throng, waving American flags and singing, "This land is our land." They boosted me up on the back of a caboose in their lovely train station so that I could make a birthday speech. The America that you might think is long gone is, in fact, still there, waiting for you. If I have any single message for you, it is that it is never too late to get in shape. It is never too late to do a great thing. It is never too late to go in search of your deepest values and your wildest dreams of brotherhood. Everything still awaits you. Everything is still laid out in front of you. It isn't even over when the fat lady sings. I heard more than a few of them sing. And I still had 100 adventures more. Now, I want to get to any questions you might have, but first, let me tell you that the issue I walked for is far from resolved. The Senate has approved the McCain-Feingold bill, but there is a good chance it will die in the House of Representatives, or that they will change it so much that it will have to go to a Senate House Conference Committee where the anti-reformers will let it die. Here is our national problem. The cost of our elections has sent our senators, representatives, and presidents running away from us in every direction to raise money. The interests of Americans of modest means and the interests of a healthy planet have taken a backseat to the demands of multinational corporations and billionaires who now control our elections. That situation is worth walking across the country for at any age, and I'm glad I did it. I'm sure that if you fought in a war to defend democracy, or if you have lost relatives or loved ones in that constant effort, you will agree with me that our freedoms fundamentally depend upon our ability to choose people at election time who will represent our interests and our values. I hope you will agree that we must return our election to a proper human scale. I walked for one reason, so that I might ask you here to make one phone call, and you might agree to do it. Because of my effort, I ask you and all Americans to call their U.S. representatives and beg for the passage of the Campaign Finance Reform Bill, and to pass it in a form that will not require a Senate-House Conference Committee. Please do this for me. I cannot imagine anything further I can do in the short time remaining to earn the right to ask that favor of you. Thank you very much. Give us a few more words, and if you have any questions to ask, she will interpret them for me, because I am so deaf. I don't always hear them right, and if I'm answering them correctly, it's because she helps me do it.
There's also an announcement you have to make that I forgot to make, so please make it. Okay. I did not walk across the country. And I have a lot more favors to ask of you than she does. So I probably don't have the right, but please, bear with me. The cause is good. In Massachusetts, the clean elections law was passed with 67% of the vote. 1.1 million voters in Massachusetts voted for this law. One Speaker of the House of Representatives is trying to dislodge the law, and he's quite successful. Gail Canderas, who is also a representative from Wilbraham, is helping the Speaker. She has put an amendment forward that will take that will reinforce the money that is not in the budget for this year for clean elections, the $10 million that was asked for. There's no money in it this year. She has taken it one step further and said, not only that, but we need that money for other things that's in the account. The $22 million that has already been put in by the legislature, she wants to rob it. So shame on her. But not only does she want to rob it and use it for another purpose, she wants to pit the low-income wage earners that work for human services, the human service providers, and elderly health care workers who are not getting a living wage. And she wants to pit them against us, those of us who fight for the crumbs. She wants to pit us against each other. They're not talking about how much money is in the big dig and how they're going to take money from us and put it in the big dig, or take money from the big dig and put it for us. They're not talking about the New England Patriots. They found money for those things without any problem at all. But they couldn't find money in the budget for the health care workers who need a living wage, nor could they find money in the budget for us. And so now they're saying we're going to take the money you have and give it to health care workers. So there can be a whole new argument that will totally deflate their concern as incumbents that somebody might run against them and create a political discussion in this state, which we haven't had for years. So we are asking you, number one, as you walk out of this hall, there will be people at the doors with cans. And we want to run a newspaper ad in the Springfield Union and in the Daily Hampshire Gazette to talk about our local legislators and how they are neglecting to respect the will of the voters in their districts. Gail Canderas, Nancy Flavin, Billy Nagel, and several others in the Springfield area, Joe Wagner in Chicopee. So that's the first thing we're going to ask you to do, the first action. Please be generous, because we don't have, this is the first and only collection we'll be making for these television ads, newspaper ads. The second thing we're going to ask you to do is come to a rally on Friday. I know Friday's a bad time. It's going to be at noon at Wilbraham. It'll be in front of Gail Canderas' office. We want to get as many people as possible there. We want to get, we would ask that you come dressed in black. If you can't come dressed in black because you're coming from work, come anyhow. This is not a requirement. Come dressed in black and bring a sign on white paper that can hang around your neck that says, "Shame on you, Gail." She is not talking about the real issues of democracy. She is not doing what her voters asked her to do. She is doing the bidding of the Speaker. So those are the two things we're asking you to do. Please join us. Please pass this information around. If you cannot make it, call your legislators. Call the Speaker. Call anybody you want. And let them know that this is important, important work. We need to protect our democracy in Massachusetts. So, thank you very much. That's number one. Yes?
How does she spell Gail?
Gail, she spells it G-A-L-E.
Where the rally is?
17 Main Street in Wilbraham, across the street from the police station. And if you... We always pick the best places. If you want instructions, sign up outside for an email from Alice Swift. You will also get additional information from Alice and I about other actions and other things that you can do. So there will, as you leave, give us your email address and at least your name and the town you come from so we know who your rep is. There is another thing. Several clipboards are being circulated around for folks to indicate if they are interested in forming a local chapter of the Alliance for Democracy. Here they come right now. Joy has them. And if you have any questions about the Alliance or what it does or if you should sign up and what it's going to obligate you to, talk to Joy. She'll be outside in the hall or around as we wait for the signatures. So now I think I am going to take questions. Do you want to come stand beside me, or how do you want to? Probably you should do that so they can hear you. Because I don't want to try and answer in your words.
Okay.
And my voice is atrociously loud, so you use them.
Please ask that we turn this on.
Turn this on and go and... Oh, I get to do the
Yes.
Phil Donahue thing? Which end do I speak in? Repeat the questions. Can only C-SPAN
Is
can...
there anybody that has a question? Yes.
Is this thing on? I can't hear it, but maybe
No,
C-SPAN
no, that's
can hear
not
it.
on. No one's going to hear that,
Oh, no one's going to hear it. This
except
is...
when it's broadcast on television.
Got it. Sorry about that, audience. Your question, ma'am.
I have the impression that the main reason that people need all this money to run is the cost of television ads. And since it is over our public air that these things would be broadcast, I have the impression that we should be fighting for both campaign finance reform and with equal fervor the reclamation of our public air space for the use by candidates of getting their message across.
I believe you find that that is addressed in the McCain-Feingold bill.
This was a question, I believe I'm supposed to repeat it, that about airwaves and fighting just as hard for the public airways to be used for campaigns because they are so expensive as under the current system. We should be fighting just as hard for that as we do to reduce the big money.
And especially since those airways belong to us, and we lease them out for nothing to those that have them. But this is being addressed in the McCain-Feingold bill. I can't give you the exact words on it, but it will be taken care of. So that means we must get that bill passed. It was a triumph to get as much of it passed as we did in the Senate. And now if you'll all call your representatives and light up that switchboard once again, it may get passed in the House.
Another question. I love this.
Could you talk about the reaction that you got from the people across the country as you were walking about this issue?
the questioner would like to know if you would talk about the reaction to this issue that you got as you walked across the country.
A good many people didn't know what campaign finance reform meant, but when they were told it meant all the money that was being spent in the country for elections, the fact that today the person that wins is the one that can seem to raise the most money, at least that's the way it appears to end. And then they understood. And then it was that they would say to you, that's why I'm not voting, because I think they're a bunch of crooks. And I say to them, they are not crooks. They are good men. A lot of them think that they can get elected. Then they find that they have an incumbent against them that's ruining it, and they then have to, a poor man has to sell his soul in order to run, or he has to be a multimillionaire. And they're sort of trapped in this situation because our government is a little bit off its tracks and needs to be put back on again. And the problem is that they get there and they're so busy trying to raise money for the next election that they don't have time to do anything about the situation, or they don't have the courage to do it. And so it is going to be up to we the people in order to get this change made.
I'm concerned about one provision of the bill having to do with prohibition of issue ads from independent organizations, and I wonder if you could comment on that.
The issue, he's worried about the issue ads by private individuals and special organizations. Yes. Issue ads can be raised right up to the moment of election with this bill, as long as whoever is placing the ad name is recorded and the person for whom they are placing the ad. That's being taken care of by the McCain-Feingold bill.
A comment and then a question. A little Democratic victory in Hadley, just to let you know. If for those of you who have not been following it, we have actually put in a recall petition to get a certain very poor politician out of office, and about 22% of the registered voters signed it despite personal intimidation by this incumbent, and we're going to have an election June 12th. Now my question. On the federal level, we had a democracy disaster in November, and I wonder what your thoughts are, the best way to keep that sort of thing from happening again.
He wants to know whether or not, what I think about the disaster that occurred in November.
That is correct.
I think so little about it that it's not worth mentioning. And I am sure that it won't happen again.
I just wonder how many people in this room are in Gail Canderas' district. She represents South Hadley, and
Wilbraham and part of Forest Park in Springfield.
Thank you. And are they planning to call her?
Good question. The question is, how many people are from Gail Canderas' district and are they planning to call her? So can we show a show of hands? Does anyone live in Wilbraham? In Forest Park? 01, I don't remember anyhow, sorry.
28.
011, yeah, 01028 or something like that. 012, yeah, that one. Well, not a big audience. The question is, can we call her anyway? The answer is absolutely. Sir.
Hi. Ma'am, do you think that there's perhaps a natural coalition to be established, waiting to be established, between those who favor largely public financing of elections and those who favor entirely public courts. That is, publicly financed adjudication of law. And, well, beyond that, what other sort of natural coalitions do you think could be developed, with, along the lines in keeping with the public elections idea? And what organizations are there right now, however embryonic, that are formed and might be dedicated along those lines? If you can whittle that down as best you can.
So the question is, what kind of groups can join together to work on the clean elections, the public elections, and what about the coalition, or is there a coalition between the folks who are working on publicly financing campaigns and publicly financing the judicial system?
I don't know. But I do know that if you join the Alliance for Democracy, you will find that they are really the spearhead of this new order, and that they are working and are trying to work even more closely with those who are working for many of the other organizations. They're trying to join it together, and that would be a grassroots setup. I really don't know anything about the courts. I know that we hope and pray that they will all live through these next 4 years, the Supreme Court people, so there won't be necessary to make any more changes. And if it is necessary, that we can stall until, you don't have to have 9 members there, you can have 7 or 8.
I don't know how this would be possible, but I was wondering, with the House of Representatives, they're only in there for 2 years, so by the time they get in there, they basically have to start campaigning right away, and it doesn't really give them the time to actually, be a legislator. They're basically fundraising all the time. I don't know if there's a way to try to get the system so that, when you're a representative, that you sit you hold your seat for more than 2 years.
Well, of course, if it's public money and clean elections, we won't have to do any soliciting for money except the original amounts of $100 bills. But today, if a person is elected to the Senate, as he is for 6 years, he has to get the equivalent of $4,000 a day, every single day for the 6 years. Can you imagine that? $4,000 a day, every day for 6 years.
One more question? Oh, okay, sorry.
I'm glad MA is getting exercise. She's so big and heavy. It's wonderful. She's getting this rest.
No, I'm coming up here. Sorry. There's only one more, and this person has been waving her hands.
Thank you. Granny D, I think what you're doing is wonderful, and I really hope it succeeds. But I've heard speculation that even if the House passes McCain-Feingold and President Bush signs it, that it in all likelihood will be declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, who will outlaw all of its provisions except for the one that allows contributions by individuals to increase modestly. And my question for you is, what do you think of this speculation?
Did you all hear it? My understanding is that there are 25 scholars of Constitution who say that the McCain-Feingold bill is constitutional, and that anybody that says it isn't is just using a red herring. As the Brennan lawsuit. Yes, believes that it is constitutional, and they have issued reports to that effect. So if anybody tells you it's not constitutional, ask them to give you 85 people who say so.
We're going to have to end the questions now. I apologize, but the book signing piece, I think, is going to take place, and you all can discuss among yourselves and ask questions of various people around here.
There's some book signing instructions.
Oh.
If you would like to purchase a book, you need to come to this table and line up that way. If you'd like to get a book signed, you come to this table where Granny D will be seated and will be ready to sign your book. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Doris Haddock is author of Granny D, Walking Across America in My 90th Year. It's published by Villard. For more information, visit their website at villard.com. Public Lives can be seen twice every weekend here on C-SPAN 2, Saturdays at 8 p.m. and Sundays at